Disclaimer: this is audio horror fiction. If darkness or the creatures it holds scares you, leave now. Still listening? Good. Then let's begin. Sonny was always embarrassed when he'd tell people how they met, but it was an interesting story, so he'd loosen her up. There'd be laughing, teasing, usually pouring another drink, if not a few, and always making sure to start the story off by saying it could have happened to anyone. Halfway through it, she'd inevitably, almost routinely, start to cry with guilt about his injuries. When this happened, Andrew and whomever their audience happened to be would harmonize in unison, a reassuring cry of, "It wasn't your fault." Andy believed it, and that helped the audience too as well. It wasn't as if he had been engaged to a girl who had purposely hit him with her car. He had been hitchhiking along the coastal highway, an age from any town, but close to one of the best national parks in the country. That particular day, he remembered, he had been standing in 80-degree heat for about 6 hours. He had been forced to sleep on the side of the road, not wanting to camp out in the bush for fear of missing a crucial friendly driver. He had been misinformed about hitchhiking, told by most of his friends that is the best way to see a country. It may have been in the past, but hitchhiking in the modern age was tough. Almost every driver had been told that opening a door to a hitchhiker was opening the door to your own murder. Couple that with the desolate landscape, and you had the 3-day stretch without a lift that he had been enduring. Not for the first time. He had been thinking for about the millionth time that he should have just driven, or bust, or anything except fucking hitchhiking. He had been thinking that, when he got home, he was going to burn all his Kerouac books. He had been thinking that, when the car hit him. He had woken up in the hospital, glad to be amongst the living, and thinking how he could sue the dirty son of a bitch who had wrecked his legs. His doctor had told him that whoever had hit him, along with the motorcycle policeman who had happened to come by moments after the accident, had saved his life. Working together, they had laid him in the car that had hit him and sped him to safety, the cop clearing the way with his lights and the makeshift ambulance streaming behind. Andy didn't care. They may have saved his life, but his doctor had told him that he would never walk without assistance again, that he'd be lucky if he could even function without the pain meds he was prescribed. Someone, he remembered thinking, was going to fucking pay. Then she had walked through his door, 5 feet tall and every inch incredible. Her name was Sunny, and although she couldn't stop crying for the first 2 weeks that she met him, it fit her perfectly. She felt so guilty that she had cut up her license. It had taken a year of pleading from him to convince her to get a new one. She may have hit him, but he was in love, and all thoughts of bitterness fled his mind. As he said to Sunny when he proposed, "If I had to trade my legs to meet you, then it's still the best damn trade I've ever made." Andy had moved into her house. It had been renovated, evolved, she had said, to meet his needs. His needs now included handrails at the toilet and a seat in the shower. He could take a bath, at first only with Sunny's help, but later he could lower himself in from his chair with ease. He spent hours there looking at the mural on the ceiling. In it, a mother cradled her child who must have scraped his knee somehow. It soothed him, the sobbing child in the fetal position, comfortably cradled by its giant mother. He should have felt pain, both emotional and physical, but love is a powerful anesthetic, and in combination with the literal painkillers he was on, he had been dosed to the point where he felt nothing at all. They made love that night for the first time, Sunny gently easing her tiny frame onto him, her movements slow out of intimacy and a fear of hurting him. Even the bed had a handrail, but he wasn't looking at that. So much easier to focus on her. Actually, he was finding it hard to focus on anything. The meds kept him pretty much out of it, but luckily Sunny took care of remembering what medicine to take, with what, and when. Lucky he had Sunny. He remembered being embarrassed because he didn't wake up until midday the day after he proposed. She hadn't been around, her side of the bed was cold, and for the first time since he had left the hospital, he didn't feel like a proper man. He remembered that his wheelchair was on the far side of the room, and that he had to sit, emasculated and depressed for the longest 5 minutes of his life until she came up the stairs. Andy made sure his wheelchair was always within reach after that. Sunny was out of the house a lot more than Andy. He understood. She had to work, and being the sole earner at the moment put a lot of pressure on her. She would work early mornings, late nights, overnight trips, whatever she could do to put a crust on the table. It was a regular occurrence to wake up without her, knock himself out with a pill, and then wake up to her smiling face. If he woke up with her, he knew they would be spending the day together. When he left the house, it was with her. He needed her support to get around. Besides, nothing, apart from Sonny, really interested him anymore. Sonny was his angel, taking on the burden of administering his meds, soothing him after his nightmares. They came with the fever, a conscious dream, a sweaty silent delirium. Andy never told Sonny she felt guilty enough, but the nightmares were always of the crash, always nearly identical to the actual events. Heat, hitchhiking, cursing Kerouac. The only awful divergence comes at the end. He remains conscious, not just when, but after the car hits him. He feels his bones twist in their sockets, and the painkillers do not, will not, work in dreams. He sees his blood spray in the air and feels a curious giddiness as he himself is knocked like a fleshy bowling pin into the air. But that isn't the worst part. The worst part is always, always at the end. Twisted, broken, and bleeding on the ground, he watches a smiling Sonny calmly exit the bug. She ignores him, dying in front of her, and turns to examine the front of the bug. As in real life, the sturdy VW shows no sign of the impact. Turning her gaze onto him, he is always shocked by her lack of compassion. She calmly surveys the ruin the impact made of him. The nightmare always ends the same way. Sonny reaches inside what remains of his left leg. She takes a firm grasp with her hand and drags him screaming toward the rear of the bug. She takes pleasure in the immense pain this causes, at his shrieks and pleas, twisting her tiny hand inside his leg. Andy wants to wake up, has to wake up, so desperately, but he can't. He never can. She lifts him as one might a child, and tosses him into the deep boot of the VW. She tells him then, this creature who looks like his Sonny but can't be, could never be. She tells him of the horrors, the blasphemies, and the tortures that she will inflict upon him. This is always the worst part, the repulsive, horrible things coming from the face closest to his heart. But he doesn't wake up, can never wake up, until she shuts the boot. The most disconcerting part of the nightmares is how close they are to reality. He remembers how grateful he felt, how happy he still feels when he imagines the rescue. Sonny trying desperately to lift him into the car, her tiny frame dragging his huge one. The motorcycle cop, the happiest coincidence of all, who happened upon the scene and helped lift his dead weight into her boot. The two of them driving as fast as the bug could go, screaming along the desolate highway to save his life. They had saved him, she had saved him, so he never mentioned the nightmares to Sonny, or the doctor, or anyone. He made up a different one, about walking through a field made of treacle for when Sonny asked. He didn't see how that was scary, but he had read a story with it once, and besides, it earned him a lot of sympathy blowjobs. The stairs remained the only barrier between them. They were steep, narrow, and twisted straight down from the main corridor. At the bottom of them, Sonny had told Andy, was a basement, boxes, the washing machine, and the laundry. That was all there was down there. The garage opened into it, but there was a small 4-stair climb into the basement itself, and those 4 stairs may have well have been Everest for Andy. There was no way Sonny would ever be able to pull him up even 1 stair. You only had to look at her to see how her tiny frame couldn't manage to lift him. The steps had remained unevolved even after their engagement. Both Sonny and Andy agreed that it was a waste of money to install a lift into what was essentially a basement. Their money, they decided, was better spent planning the wedding. Andy secretly thought that it was a great excuse to get out of doing his own washing. So, agreeably, the stairs remained unhospitable to Andy, and the basement a mystery. Life went on. 2 years went past like 2 minutes, although Andy thought that might have more than a little to do with the meds he still had to take. The side effects were nasty, and Andy would be knocked out or feverish for hours on end, but they killed the pain. Andy, though he lived in a Sonny-centric world, was happy. He had woken without her. Smiling, he made his way to the bathroom, poured himself a bath, and popped another pill. When he woke, he thought with a smile, Sonny would have returned. He woke as usual with eyes blurred and mind slow. The drugs always left him dazed, and it took a minute or two to regain his surroundings. But today it wasn't just the drugs. The last thing he remembered was being warm and content in his bath. The cold, dusty air made him shiver and cough simultaneously. He twisted from his sprawled position, his neck arching upwards like a flower towards the sun. Looking up, he could see the familiar mural on the ceiling of his bathroom, but it was about 2 meters further than it usually was. He could see, in between the mural and himself, the rotting floorboards that must have given way beneath him. He could feel the cold edge of a shard of bathtub pressing against his spine. His hand brushed against something that was disconcertingly soft against his palm. He was, he supposed, in the basement beneath his bathroom. From what Sonny had told him, the laundry was below the bathroom, but the room he could see was a laundry only in the sense that there was a washing machine in the corner of her room. It was most definitely, he decided, her room. He knows, instantly. He knows before he spots the huge bunches of torn and bloody clothes that are piled up next to the washing machine. Soiled and soaked with grime even more than blood. They are the unofficial uniform of the drifters, the homeless, and the down on their luck. He knows before he sees the pit filled with the mixed and mangled remains of the fresh and the not so fresh, yet curiously emanating no smell. He knows. Because he knows, he scrabbles desperately, trying to right himself on ruined legs. He hasn't used his legs in 3 years. Without Sonny, the only way he can move is with his chair. He spots it, on its side in a pool of dirty bathwater, 2 meters away. He tries to pull himself forward with his arms, cutting his hands on broken bathtub and other horrific objects. He tries desperately to leave this room, this house. This girl. The failure to move even an inch is absolute. He has nothing left. He brings his stumps up to his bleeding, stinging hands and pretends he is the infant in the mural. He cries because he knows that everything is not going to be alright, that nothing has been alright in a long time, and that he will never be alright again. Because he knows. Not nightmares. Memories. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to help feed the dark machine. Share with other fans of horror, and if you have a story that you would like for me to read, check the description below for details.